I do this because I'm passionate about bringing peace sort of to people's everyday lives, not, you know, people think of Mediator and they think divorce and they think of lawsuits, and that's not where my passion lies. My passion really lies in sort of interpersonal relationships and that sort of stuff. So I love sharing this information with people. So I'm just going to get going, and I might talk a little quick just because I think I packed a lot in. I could be wrong. We could end up with 20 minutes left over. But so first I want to talk why we avoid difficult conversations. I'm sure if you all think about it, you can think about a conversation that you need to have that potentially you're currently avoiding, because you think that a lot of people, what they say to me is, oh, I avoid conflict and then I don't have any. And that's a really nice thing to think, but it's not realistic. Just because you avoid it doesn't mean it's not there. My tax bill would say the same thing. I can avoid my tax bill. Doesn't mean I don't have taxes to pay. I still do. So you can also, I think if everyone takes a second too and thinks about a conversation you had that maybe you feel like you could have done a lot better on. And sometimes they're little conversations. Sometimes, you know, they're with your spouse about, you know, who's going to pack school lunches, or they're with coworkers, or they're with employees, or they're with clients who aren't happy, and how do you deal with them? So we all have them. We all have them on a regular basis, and we all struggle with them, myself included. Because when you're emotional and when you're involved in something, it can be really hard to see sort of a way out and see what we do. So we often avoid difficult conversations because we're afraid of how the other person reacts. Sometimes we think that they're going to explode, they're going to yell at us, and that's possible. Sometimes too, one of the reasons I do the walks with Walter is because sometimes we're not ready to have that conversation with the other person. So a lot of this stuff, as I go through it, you can still work on it on your own from your side. If you're not quite ready to have that conversation with the other side, there's no reason you can't sort of go through these steps to help you react and sort of manage that difficult conversation better, even without having it. So we avoid people. We think there's no point. A lot of times people say to me, there's no solution to this. There's no talking to them. There's no getting through this. Again, seems really easy when you're in it. Sometimes the answer seems like it's a glaring answer on the back of the wall, and you just can't see it, and your friends are banging their heads against that glaring answer on the wall, but you need help getting there. Sometimes, again, people think it's not worth the stress, and sometimes that's true. I mean, it's really important to pick your battles in life, and I'm not suggesting that every little thing needs to have a big conversation, but at the same time, avoidance for something that might be worth the stress isn't a good idea either, or you're still going to end up paying interest on your tax bill because it's not worth the stress, but it's still sitting there. It simmers, it lingers. You know, I talk to people who say, you know, 10 years ago something happened and things just went downhill from there. And had they talked about it at the time, it wouldn't have turned into the big thing it did. A lot of times we feel guilty. We know we've misbehaved in some way, and we don't want to have to own up to that. We don't want to have to admit it. To be honest, no one here wants to admit that they've done something not necessarily mean, but maybe unkind or unthoughtful. No one ever wants to admit that about themselves, but we're all human beings. And if we show ourselves some kindness, we can, you know, get over doing something wrong and make things better. Or we think that there's nothing we've done, but we're worried someone's going to accuse us of something. So if we don't have that difficult conversation, we don't have to open the door to being accused of something. And that also is not a good reason to avoid having a difficult conversation, because it's possible you have done something and you don't know you've done it. Or it's possible something you've done has been misinterpreted and turned into something more than what it is. So when you avoid the conversation, you don't get the opportunity to make that misunderstanding right, and that can make things worse too, which is a huge reason why I'm a big believer in actually having difficult conversations. So if we can go, and that's the last time you'll see Walter, sorry about that. We're going to move on to a slideshow full of Michelle Vital, my glorious model. So the cost of avoidance, I think we can go through this pretty quickly. Stress, it causes us stress. It causes us lost sleep. We think about things, you know, when you're supposed to go to an event, you know, if it's a Christmas dinner or a family wedding, and you're thinking, well, I don't want to have a blow up with this person when we go, or, you know, it's stressful for us and it sucks. Conflict sucks, whether it's big conflict, whether it's small conflict, it sucks. Strained relationships, you may be avoiding something, but someone might be upset for a while, lingering on something. Again, it could be a misunderstanding, but it can affect relationships. lost productivity in your business or at your job. Unhappy employees are less likely to want to come in and to contribute. It's a Band-Aid versus a cure. So by avoiding it and just saying, yeah, you're right, you can walk away, and you might be bring on that conflict, or they might be, so it doesn't work. And so many lost opportunities. When we're avoiding conflict, we make poor decisions because our brain goes into fight or flight mode, and usually we choose flight. And so we miss a lot of opportunities. We make a lot of poor decisions just to try to protect ourselves from those reasons we're avoiding. And in no way does that help us get things solved. So that's the cost of avoiding. Has anyone ever avoided anything big that they regret? No. Okay. I'm so new to the Zoom. So we can go to the next slide. We're good. So I'm going to get right into the meat of things and talk about difficult conversations. And really, every difficult conversation you have is not one conversation. It's 3 conversations in one. And most of the time, it is impossible to avoid them. But if you recognize you're having those 3 conversations, it becomes a lot easier to have them, and a lot easier to plan in advance what you're going to do, because you're aware that you're having these 3 conversations. So when we're having a difficult conversation, we're having a conversation, the what happened conversation, which usually is where we're focusing on blame and where we're actually trying to talk about what happened, who was wrong, who was right. And we often, when we're having that conversation, even in our heads, we assume that we know the other person's intentions. We very often attribute what we think they were thinking to them and their actions without actually knowing if that's right. We're also having a feelings conversation because, let's be honest, hard conversations involve feelings. And in fact, they don't only usually just involve feelings. Most of the time, they're actually about feelings. They're about hurt feelings. They're about scared feelings. Really difficult conversations revolve around feelings. And you're having an identity conversation too. You're looking at the identity of who you think you are, and that's where being afraid that you've done something wrong comes into play. You're having a conversation where you're trying to make sure the story you tell yourself about yourself is true. We all like to say, I'm a good person, I wouldn't do anything hurtful. But when you're having these difficult conversations, recognizing that that's running through the background and you're having that conversation, even if you're not saying it out loud, it's true. We care about what people think of us, but more importantly, we care about the stories we tell ourselves about why we did things. A lot of times we like to say, when we do something wrong, when we're angry, when we do something wrong to someone, we like to think that we were forced into it or we were having a bad day. There was a reason we did what we did. And if we do something nice, it's because we're a good person. But we flip that around when we're upset with someone else. And when they do something good, we think it's because they had to, they were forced to. And that if they do something wrong, it's because they're a bad person. So we're telling that story because our brain wants us to know that we're good people and we have value and we're worthy of being loved. So those are the 3 conversations that are playing in every difficult conversation. And when you recognize them, especially before you go into a conversation, and you sort of think about, if you're going to have a difficult conversation, take that time. 1, calm down before you have it. You don't want to have a screaming match. But take the time to actually think to yourself, what do I think happened? Am I, putting intent on someone that might not be there? What are my feelings that are involved in this conversation? What do I think their feelings are? And what is it about me that is important for me to keep as my identity while I'm having this? And how much of it is about me holding on to that facade versus me being honest and real about what's happened? You're always having those 3 conversations, whether you vocalize them or not, and recognizing them and being able to plan around them is huge when it comes to having a tough conversation. So we can go on to the next one, which is marshmallows. I'm probably the only mediator that talks about marshmallows as much as I do, but I firmly believe in them. So what's a marshmallow? I often say to everybody that and some people disagree, but I'm a hard candy coating. Most of us are hard candy coatings. You get the odd Xanthys or Heather McRae's that are, soft and squishy right from the start. But most of us are hard candy coatings. We've got maybe it's a chocolate cake coating, you know, that cakey coating, but we all have sort of like one of those inflatable sumo suits that we're wearing, you know, and it protects us. It protects us from, you know, hurt feelings we've had, or from shame we feel, or from feeling that maybe, you know, we're too tall and we don't want to overcrowd everyone. Whatever it is, we walk around with sort of this hard candy coating. And when we're arguing with people, we're arguing hard candy coating, the hard candy coating. We're keeping egos involved. We're trying to stay on the side of right, because we're more concerned about being right than getting things solved a lot of the time. So we're walking around bumping into each other with these hard candy coatings. And of course that leads to cracks, and it leads to dents, and it doesn't really get anything done. But the beauty is, under that hard candy coating is you have a marshmallow. It's a great big squishy marshmallow. And you even actually, your marshmallow has a marshmallow, which is really the core of what makes you human, is this marshmallow. We all have it, and we all try to protect our marshmallow at all costs. Because I think everyone has had an opportunity where someone has said something that has pierced through that candy coating and has just like poked at your marshmallow and, you know, kind of made your marshmallow feel a little sore. So we try not to, but if you really want to have that productive conversation and find solutions, you need to talk marshmallow to marshmallow. Talking candy coating to candy coating doesn't work. You really need to talk from your marshmallow. So before you have those difficult conversations, you need to sit down and you need to really like acknowledge your marshmallow. You need to understand sort of, you know, talk to your marshmallow and figure out what's really going on. Are you offended because of something big, or is it something small, and how is it affecting the inner core of who you are? And, you know, be kind to that marshmallow and recognize that if you made mistakes, that's okay. We can make things better with this conversation. You know, I'll be honest with you, most difficult conversations aren't one person being 100% wrong and the other person being 100% right. So when you recognize that you've got this soft, squishy marshmallow that you were trying to protect, but you're willing to open up your softness, you're a lot more willing to have that conversation. Because what happens is that other person has a marshmallow too. And when they see your marshmallow and they recognize that you're exposing your marshmallow, they're more likely to expose their marshmallow and talk from their marshmallow as well. And another important thing to remember is kindness, and thinking of the other person's marshmallow does that. Because if somebody else is going to talk to you from their marshmallow, you need to be kind to their marshmallow. And often kindness gets long forgotten when it comes to tough conversations or arguments or disagreements. But at the end of the day, at least honoring that person's marshmallow will make you feel better about the decisions you're making. So, Candace says she loves the marshmallow to marshmallow. Me too. It's one of my favorite analogies. I love talking marshmallows. So we're going to move on to angry, because it leads from marshmallows. So a lot of people use the phrase, I'm really angry that you did this. You made me really angry. The problem with that is anger actually isn't a primary emotion. A lot of people think it is, but it's not. You can be sad because something's happened. You know, you can be sad because I lost my Nana, or I can, you know, be sad because I didn't get to walk with Walter today because I'm doing this. But actually I prefer this because it's cold out. But anger, you can't be angry because of something. You're angry from other reasons. It's a secondary emotion. It is not your main emotion. There's always another emotion that's driving anger. So one of the things, next slide, is I encourage you to do is catch yourself when you hear yourself using the word angry and try to use a different word instead. And this is an example of why my sister is the artist in our family and I am not. I drew this myself with my collection of crayons. And when you're angry, that's what we show, that's what people see, is that we're angry, and we talk about that. But when, you know, everyone likes to talk about icebergs or a big floating marshmallow if you want. But the reality is that what's happening underneath the anger is what's really going on, and it's what's pushing that anger to the surface. So next time you find yourself saying, oh, I'm so angry that so-and-so did this, think to yourself, because understanding your anger too is how you're going to help get to a solution when you're having a tough conversation. You're not angry someone's done something. That, again, that's a secondary emotion. You're worried, you're frustrated. Frustration is a huge one. Did I even write frustrated in there? Embarrassed. Yes, I did. You're sad. You're disappointed. Sometimes you're feeling guilty. There's all these reasons for anger that aren't anger, but we display them as anger. And again, that's a lot of our hard candy coding. Anger is a really easy thing to walk around showing, whereas embarrassed or overwhelmed are not. But so you need to recognize, and one of the things you can do before you have that conversation is try to think of what emotion might be driving them. Oh, they seem really angry with me. I'm afraid to confront them about it. Are they really angry, or are they, do they feel rejected because they didn't get invited somewhere, or because you didn't let them cook Christmas dinner? You need to think about what's driving the anger, because that in you and in them, because that's where you're going to find solutions. Because you can't fix angry, but you can fix hurt, you can fix worried, you can fix shame, you can fix the things that lie below the anger. So if you get through those and you start trying to figure out, and if you don't know what's driving their anger, we're going to get to how you can figure that out, but recognize that anger is not a primary emotion, it is a secondary emotion. And it's a really cool exercise when you often hear yourself talking and you say the word angry, and then you stop yourself and you think, well, I'm not angry, what am I? And it really helps you work through conversations, because you're able to identify what in you is causing you to be angry. It's a big thing for difficult conversations. And we can move away from my art. My husband was like, I'm not sure you should put that up, but he wanted me to make it on the computer. No. And I was like, it'll be just as bad in paint.
I love this. I love this picture. I love this example, this analogy. As a parent, lately, I've been finding myself saying, I'm angry, or I hear the kids saying, why are you so angry? And it's, I just don't like the word at all. But now I have words I can substitute for that. I'm again just thinking of my kids, and I'm definitely printing this out, and I'm so glad that you drew it by hand, because it just speaks to me more. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to tell my husband that. You can always go online and print out your own blank iceberg and have the kids fill it in too, because
oh, I love that idea.
Or you can just have them draw that. You can draw them a blank iceberg and have them fill it in too. But it really, like, when you can start using those other words, it stops even getting to that point where you have to have this untold conversation, because you're having it as you go.
And it's just angry. It's just so, it just makes me feel better. Oh yes, I am tired, or I'm frustrated because of the bad behavior. It gives us a solution. It feels like it brings us closer to a solution. Okay, I just need more sleep, or I need to turn off my computer, or or you need to listen. Yes. Thank you. I'll move ahead to the next slide.
So understanding anger really leads to start to talk about solutions. So when you recognize you're having those three conversations, whether you're actually vocalizing them or not, and when you recognize that you have a marshmallow and they have a marshmallow, and it is important to talk marshmallow to marshmallow, and then you recognize that really the underneath of that anger iceberg is where the marshmallows are, but that's where you start getting in. Now it's time to actually put down the gloves and start having that conversation. So how do we do that? Here's a really cool thing. How many people, and we're not going to be able to see, but put up your hand just in case you happen to be on the screen. How many people here think of themselves as extroverts? And I'll pop up my hand. I'm usually fairly extroverted. No, I see Charlotte shaking her head like no. So here's the thing. Most of the people, I know there are some people that we can't see that are putting their hands up. Most of the people that are extroverts, you would say one of the characteristics of an extrovert is that they talk a lot, they're loud, they're boisterous. Would everyone agree with that? That's sort of the view of an extrovert? Yeah, I see Trina nodding her head. But when you look at this situation, or when you look at a classroom situation, for the most part, extroverts sit down and they listen. When Christine has her meet and greet, I might whisper a little bit to some people beside me, but I'm sitting quietly when someone's talking. When Amanda was talking last month, I was sitting quietly and I was listening, which you would say to yourself, well, that's not the definition of an extrovert. That's because here's what's interesting. Your personality and the personality of the person you're talking to only make up 9% of how you react to a conflict situation. The other 91% is made up of by the actual situation that you create. It's the situation, how we behave is determined by what's going on around us. It's not determined by who we are from a personality type. It's great to know who we are from personality types for how to talk to people and to know how we react. But the reality is that situations and where we are determine what we do and how we react more than our personality types. So I see Christine looking up at the sky on that one. But if you really think about a lot of the times when you've been in a situation, you are more likely, especially as an adult, a functioning, intelligent person, to behave according to what the situation needs you to behave to than you are based on your personality type. It's just human nature, and that's the way it is. So one of the things that's really important is when you're going to have this conversation to try to get to solutions is you need to think about the situation. And often I use the word manipulate, and a lot of people take it to be a negative word, but I mean, let's remember that like an artist manipulates clay, and it's not necessarily a bad word, but you need to take that situation and you need to make it as healthy as you can to make it a productive conversation. So make sure that you're calm. If somebody's got you boiling and you're just ready to talk, if all you can take is 10 breaths, take those 10 breaths. Just say to them, I just need a minute. I just want to collect myself because I want to talk. If it's someone that you're preparing to talk to from now on, you can. Think of it this way: when you've been at work and your boss, says, you get an email that says, be in my office at 1. And that's all it says. And now you're sitting there, you're like, oh, am I in trouble? I didn't send the client call. Did this not go out in time? Oh, wait, no, maybe I'm getting a raise. Oh, no, I'm probably in trouble. And let's be honest, our brains tend to go to that negative. No, I'm in trouble. I've done something wrong. So what your boss has essentially done is set up, so they've set up a terrible situation because now you're going in and you're stressed out and you're automatically on guard. And so when you go in and you're guarded and you're ready to fight for yourself and defend yourself, that's not going to lead to and maybe they do have something hard to say, that's not going to lead to a productive situation. So you really want to think about the situation you're creating and saying, you can say things in that situation like, you're such a hard worker, but I'm a little concerned about some of the things that have happened lately. Can we sit down and talk at 1? And you've at least then the person knows what's happening. But at the same time, you've come from a place of, you're a great employee. I want to be able to help you get back to that. Something's amiss in it, maybe from our end. So it's all in setting that up when, you want to talk to your sister. Sometimes your sister's driving you bananas and, but you want to say to her, I really love you, but I really want to talk to you about the time you hurt my feelings. And so being able to create a situation that is calm, trying not to do obviously in a room full of people, if you can help it, set that situation, because when you can take something and you can set it up right, the conversation is going to flow a lot better. And sometimes that's not sitting across from each other and feeling sort of confrontational. Sometimes it's sitting on the couch side by side or something like that. Xanthi, with that, I always start the conversation with, I'm okay. Yeah.
I was going to say or ask how you feel about having these conversations over email or text. Personally, I don't like them over email or text, but what is your thoughts on that? Because, technology is so prevalent nowadays.
If you go to the next slide, I'll tell you my thoughts on that. Is it the next slide? Yeah. How you communicate matters, because that's part of setting up the situation. So don't have those difficult conversations via email. What you're seeing on your screen is actual science. And I sent Christine the one without the study note, but I will find it if anyone wants it. Actual science has done studies on how people receive messaging. So it's really easy to be brave when you're sitting behind the computer and you want to send something. But let me take you through this one, because this one's kind of a big one. First of all, empathy requires eye contact. So it is really difficult to be empathetic to somebody if you're not looking at them, which is why face-to-face, I'm pointing like you can all see me point. I put a bullseye there because face-to-face, while it seems like the scariest, it's actually not the scariest way to have a difficult conversation because it's going to be the most productive. And don't forget, when I say empathy requires eye contact, that goes the same for them. So they're going to have more empathy for you when you're face-to-face. The other beauty about being face-to-face when you're having a difficult conversation, obviously, is body language and is the tone of what you're saying, is your facial expressions. But really what it comes down to is it's your ability to pivot. It's your ability to react to what they're saying. So if you're saying something that somebody's misunderstanding and you're sitting in the same room with them, you can very quickly recognize that they're understanding and you can pivot your message to be able to make them understand what you're saying in a way. It also allows you to react to what they're doing so that, you can sort of understand when you can see them getting worked up, you can change quickly, to set that situation back up and be like, I don't mean this from a negative perspective. I mean this from a perspective of I want us to solve this so we can move forward. So face-to-face is so important when you're having a difficult conversation, even though it feels like it's the hardest one to have. But I'm telling you, and I'm going to go through the others and you'll understand why face-to-face wins. Video chat is the next best thing you can do because, again, you still get that eye contact to a degree. I can make eye contact with, I can only see Trina right now, so I can make full-on eye contact with her. But it also, there's Christine's eyes. It also allows you to, again, you can still pivot, right? Christine can interrupt if she thinks I'm going down the wrong path. You can't do that if you're not having a free-flowing conversation. It still allows you to pivot. It allows you to see facial expressions, and it allows you to hear that tone. You can say, that great job, and mean great job, or you can be like, great job, and be sarcastic. And face-to-face and video chat allow you the ability to understand what someone's doing so you can't misunderstand what they're saying, and they can't misunderstand what you're saying. The next on this scientific list is telephone or voice calls. You've lost the eye contact and you've lost the facial expressions, but you still have the ability to pivot because you're having a conversation that's live and free flowing. And you still have the opportunity to hear tone of voice because, again, that can mean a lot of things. I never said that you should do that versus I never said you should do that. They have different meanings.
Hi there. It's Darla Harini calling. I just wanted to make
sure. So, sorry, I heard something and then I heard nothing.
Was that meant for us, or was somebody on a call?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to mute her.
Okay.
Darla, I think picked up the phone to take a call. So
it's ironic that we're on the telephone call for that one. What I didn't put on here, because it's science, is I'll just quickly mention, is the next best way to communicate is two-way radio. I don't know why science thinks that's important, but it still allows you that pivoting, right? It still allows you, it's not quite the same as telephone because you can't interrupt as much, but it still allows you that free-flowing conversation. And the absolute worst way you can have a difficult conversation is written. Email, text message, private messaging. Anyone in here who is a teenager can probably tell me that once a day their teenager has had an argument with someone over text because they misunderstood that winky emoji. Were they being sarcastic with the winky emoji? It blows my mind how many fights I've seen. My cousin's daughter was living here for a while, and the misunderstandings on text messages blow my mind. Just pick up the phone, call them. It's insane. Because again, you can't do that. And the big thing with email is it feels brave and it feels smart, right? So Xanthi can sit down and write a letter to Christine and say, Christine, here are all the terrible things you did to me, but here's why I'm willing to move past them, because we know those two have a real tough relationship. And Xanthi will write that letter, and then what's going to happen is she's going to send it to Donna, and she's going to say, Donna, I'm really upset with Christine, but I want to make things better. Look at this email I wrote. And Donna's going to read it, and Donna's there, and Donna's going to say, that's a beautiful email. Christine is going to understand what you're saying. You've been clear. You've been fair. good job, Xanthi. Best email you've ever written. This is going to solve the problem. And then Xanthi hits send. And about an hour later, Christine, who's just been sitting in traffic for 2 hours and got a ticket, opens the email. And Christine, because that's the mindset she's in, reads Xanthi's email, but she reads it sarcastic. She reads it impatient. She reads it in a completely different tone. I always tell people that nobody gets the email you sent. They get the email they received. They get the email, again, you go back to the situation. They get the email and they read it in the tone of the situation they're in, that you have no control over. You have no control over when they open that email and the tone that they imply on your email. So, and you can't pivot. So the reality is you send that email and halfway through they might be ready to just argue back, and you have no way to at that point stop the conversation and reiterate what you meant because you're on an email. There's absolutely no way to pivot. And then what happens? They misinterpret your email, because we go back to that thing I talked about where, you know, if you're angry and someone does something, it's because they're a bad person. If they had to, it's because they meant to. That sort of thing. That's what we attribute to people's intentions when we're angry. Whether they're true or not, we're human beings. That's how our brains are wired. So you can't send that email and expect that it's going to be delivered. Even though Donna was like, that's a great email, Xanthi. The reality is, it doesn't matter. You have no control over that situation and you have no chance to pivot. And I don't know anyone who can say, yeah, emails were a great way to solve misunderstandings. They're great for keeping records of things and for, you know, talking about, you know, now that we've agreed on this, here's how we're going to move forward, summarizing in an email, but actually trying to confront and have a difficult conversation via any written medium just doesn't work. So that's how I feel about emailing during arguments. So then how are we doing on time? We're okay. I'll talk quick. So when we keep talking about finding solutions, now that you've got someone sitting down with you, or at least on a Zoom call with you, the next hardest thing to do is listen. It is really hard to listen when we're angry. And that's fair. Again, that's how we're wired. We're wired to defend ourselves. We're wired to defend the situation, and we're wired to sort of make sure that we're heard. The problem with that is that then we're talking to that angry on the top of the iceberg. We're not talking to the stuff under, because we don't know what that stuff is. We don't know what's driving anger if we don't ask the questions. And it can feel really hard to listen more than you talk, but it's the best way to do things. One of the things I like to say, so you'll go into a situation and I'll have two people, or even if I were just doing one-on-one sort of consulting, and I'll say, well, what might happen if you were to ask them this? Oh, well, nothing would happen. I already know what they're going to do. And you attribute what you expect someone to do to something. The reality is you have no idea. You have no idea what they're going to do. You have no idea what they're going to say. You can tell me over and over and over again you do, and I can tell you over and over and over again that I have seen people be surprised by what other people have to say. So you don't know, and unless you ask, and unless you ask in that kind, you need to ask their marshmallow. Don't ask their hard candy coating. Ask their marshmallow. And when somebody's talking from their marshmallow, you need to listen. You need to paraphrase to ensure you heard it right, to say, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying that you're frustrated that I'm always late, and that gets you anxious because you worry about all the things we have planned and how we're going to fit them in. Am I hearing you right? And then they might be able to say, yeah, that's what I'm trying to convey to you, and then you can say, okay, well, when I'm always late, here's why I'm always late. I've got two kids who insist on wearing a certain pair of shoes, and if we don't have those shoes, or if we don't have the right white bear, then we can't get there on time. But being able to actually have that conversation, if you hadn't really asked them to talk about why they're angry, you're not going to know that it's because they're feeling anxious about, maybe they put dinner in the oven and they're, anxious that it's not going to taste as good because you came late. And they're going to feel like they failed because they wanted to impress you with good dinner, and now they haven't because they've made a crap dinner, and it, balls up in anxiety for them, and it blows up. Or you get some people My mom one year wanted to cook Christmas dinner. We have Christmas at our house every year now. It's just easier with the kids, and my sister and I have husbands who have funky schedules. And my mom wanted to make Christmas dinner one year, which I thought was really weird because, and she may be on the video, I don't know. She insisted on making Christmas dinner. And so what I did is, because I learned all this, is I actually gave it some thought. And I thought, you know, by having Christmas at our house every year now, I took away that sort of one thing. My mom loves to feed her family, and she loves to cook for us and loves to provide for us. And she felt the need to do that. It was completely impractical because they're coming from Northern Ontario, and my husband likes to cook. So it was completely impractical, but she had that need to do it, I think. I've never asked her if I'm right on that, but so I let her. It was very inconvenient. A lot of things went funky, but you know what? She got to feed her family on a holiday. So, and it's listening to that with that beginner's mindset. Like, don't go into a situation assuming you know why. Like, you might go into that situation and be like, Mom, obviously Mom thinks I can't cook properly and that my Christmas dinners aren't good enough. That's her inclination to do, right? Why doesn't Mom think I'm good enough? Well, that's not it. Go into that beginner's mindset and ask yourself, why might this be so important to her that year after year she wants to do it? And you know what? I let her do it the one year she hasn't wanted to do it again. Go to a beginner's mindset. Don't go in there assuming you know what they're going to say, know the solution. You need to go in there and you need to wonder what's going on. Pretend you know nothing. Start at the beginning and actually ask, because I guarantee you there are nuggets in there that you don't know about because you've always just assumed and attributed. Super important to listen more than you talk. And Xanthi said something, but I missed it. Sorry, Xanthi. But since we're talking solutions and I want to be quick, now that you've got people talking and you're trying to figure out what's going on, it's really important to note the difference between interests and positions. So interests are what you ask for. Mom, I want a car. Those are positions. So your position is, I hate going out in the snow, so I'm not coming to Donna's house. But it's the interests are what drive those positions. So when you're asking all those questions and you're listening more than you're talking and you're understanding marshmallows, you really get to the interests, which are what are driving people to make the positions that they are. And that's where you're going to find the solutions, because 9 times out of 10, there are overlapping interests. And once you start with those overlapping interests, you can really start to find solutions and be creative. So I like to think of difficult conversations as more like problem-solving exercises. Because we've got a problem, we're not agreeing on something, or we're not agreeing what to do about something. Let's figure out how to solve it. It's an exploration, it's a research, it's a problem solve. It's not a difficult conversation. So, Mom, I want a car. If you look at blue, the interests that are pushing this need for a car are the need for freedom. I want to have fun with my friends. It's having a car is cool. But if you're Mom, you're thinking, how are we going to pay for this? Are you still going to get your homework done? Because you're going to be out with your friends all the time. And oh my God, you're still a kid. You just lost a tooth. How are you old enough to drive, right? But what lies in the middle there, and I put safety in twice because I assume if Walter ever got his license, that I would be extra worried about safety. So I put it in twice. So, but the reality is that when you sit down and talk about it, I'm sure if this was your teenage son, he's just as concerned about safety as you are. Independence is something that overlaps. They want independence maybe for completely different reasons. But you want independence for them as well, right? You want to raise a functioning adult, I would assume most of the time. So you want them to have that independence. You just may want them to have it a little more tempered than they want to have it. But the reality is when you recognize you have that common need for independence, you can now start working on what does that independence look like. But first you need to acknowledge that you have that common interest. So, those are all the things when you start talking about different things, like with Christmas dinner. Honestly, I just want to have a happy family. I don't care what the table's set. Some people have fancy table, and that's awesome. If that's really important to you, but to me, it was I just want to have my family be happy and to have everyone in my family feel valued. And if that means mashed potatoes get made 4 days in advance, then you know what, potatoes get made 4 days in advance. But you just need to think about whenever someone takes a hard line on something, you need to try to figure out what their interest is that's driving that position. So, you know, you can even take it back to employment. We all have small businesses. And when someone's driving you on a price, they want a better price, they want a better price. That's their position, is that your prices are too high. What are their interests? So if you start thinking about their interest could be that for them, they're very cost sensitive. And they may not end up being your client, but when you understand their interest, it's not just, oh my God, they're so cheap. It could be, you know, I'm worried that I'm not going to get to the end of the month, but I really need this service. Or, you know, I don't know the value of the service in the market. And so it's all those things that are actually driving that position. So when you start asking those questions and being open to the answers, you're able to figure those out more, and then you can find solutions in that sort of Venn diagram middle. I don't know what you call the middle of that, the Venn middle, the viddle. Anyways, really important to distinguish between them. So I think we're almost out of time, because I know I was supposed to leave time for questions. So I just wanted to say it's really, really hard to cram everything into a short time. There are tons of stuff on the floor, that cutting room floor, that didn't make it in. So I actually, in March, I'm having for small businesses a before the bad review. So we're going to take this more in depth, and it's going to be difficult conversations to have with unhappy customers or clients. But honestly, one difficult conversation is another. So it'll apply to personal life and dealing with your teenagers. So we can open it up to questions. I think, did I put Walter on the final slide on the thank you? There might be one more. Yes, I did. He's so happy we're done. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to hear them, or if anyone wants to sort of share an experience of it really. Jen H has a question. Let me see if I can open this. If you determine someone's issue goes much deeper and think they need someone like a counselor. So that gets tough. It's very possible that, I mean, there's a lot of times when you look at mental illness and anxiety that people do need more help. In my profession, what I do in that case then is I screen and I ask people if they have issues like that. You need to be very kind to their marshmallow at that point and determine if you're the person that should be offering that help, or if you should find somebody who can. So when you recognize that it's an issue that goes far deeper than you can handle, then you should reach out and get help for that. You don't want to say, hey, I sat and listened to Sarah ramble for 45 minutes and now I can solve all difficult conversations. Because the other reality is there are some people you just can't, you know, as a mediator, we say there are some people you just can't mediate with, right? Like I can't. So you really need to, if you recognize that someone's got deeper issues, you need to, you know, recognize them and be kind to them. But then also from yourself, recognize that maybe what's going on has nothing to do with you. I like to ask people what may be going on with them that has nothing to do with you, because we attribute someone's rudeness or shortness to them being angry with us, or not angry, frustrated. And sometimes it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with something completely different. So ask yourself that. What could be going on that is nothing to do with you?
I think that's probably my biggest takeaway from today. You gave a stat quite at the beginning of your presentation that you said 9% is our personality and 91% is the situation we create or the situation we're in where we are. And that's astonishing to me and an eye-opener, because I think before anyone goes in to have any difficult conversation, you almost need to say, like, are you ready for this? Can we talk?
Yeah.
Because I had a situation a couple weeks ago where someone called me to talk about a difficult conversation she had with someone else. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't talk right now. I have a deadline and I have to go. And I wish that person had let us hang up the phone and set up another time. And it turned out that was the spinning point to something that negative that happened between us. So very interesting. So I'm going to keep that in mind a lot when I feel I've had some kind of injustice against me. It's like, okay, what maybe happened to them beforehand?
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, really.
And that's why sometimes too, that's why like with the walks with Walter, sometimes you're not ready to have that conversation with them yet. You need to sort of work on it from your own end. And, you know, I'm not a therapist. I like to say if after 4 hours, you know, 4 1-hour walks with me, we can't solve things, you need a therapist. Because if you're a control freak, I can't fix you being a control freak, but I can help you deal with the fallout from being a control freak. That's kind of the fine line. So yeah, sometimes you just got to recognize that something's going on with them, but you can work on how you're going to approach things with them, recognizing that something might be going on with them, so that when you ask them that, you're not going in with a chip on your shoulder.
Precisely. And the other thing that I loved is, I'm just going to recap a couple of the points. And if anybody else wants to recap an aha moment, of course, the marshmallow to marshmallow, love that. And funny, I just gave my kids a marshmallow before to quiet them. Like, if you be quiet, I'll give you a marshmallow. But, I loved when you listen to understand, not listen to react. Like, listen to what people are saying so that you understand from their point of view, and the beginner's mindset. Like, with my mother-in-law, I have to use that.
And it's so easy to say, but when you're in the middle of it, it's so hard. It's not, that's why it's okay to need help with it, because it is so hard when you're in a snow squall. You don't know where that snow squall ends. It is so hard, but recognizing the things make it a little bit easier.
Absolutely. So I don't know, do you guys want me to unmute you, or can you unmute yourself? I'll unmute you and let's see how that goes for a minute. Does anyone have any questions for Sarah that you might like to ask? I
saw Xanthi has one, and Xanthi, I think you should start with a quick email to set the tone of the conversation, but I think you should go face to face. Based on what I think, but always keep, your safety is always important too, right? Make sure that your marshmallow is protected.
So is Xanthi trying to talk to us? Do you want me to unmute you, Xanthi, or you just, no, you were good. You got the response you needed. Okay, perfect. No problem. And then I'm just going to pop back in the chat box. See if there's any other questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great presentation. Oh, Xanthi's at Starbucks. I was wondering where that fabulous wall background came from. I'm like, where was that in her house? Okay, well, that was awesome. Sarah did share with us that she has a workshop coming up in very soon in March. So I would love if everyone could give kudos to Sarah by going to her Facebook business page and either saying thank you right there on her Facebook business page, or giving her a review if you felt this information was helpful, and just give a shout out. I think more and more, if we do that with one another, this karma will come back and create a really wonderful energy in our lives. So Sarah, thank you very much for sharing with us and condensing down what you do. I know we can't possibly get it all in 40 minutes, but you did give some really golden nuggets today. Sarah is the lead mediator of Empowered Results Mediation. And again, if you could share anything about today, either in our Facebook group or on her page, that would be wonderful. As we all know, small business owners' social proof helps to advance us immensely. So thank you everyone for participating in this MAWB Lunch and Learn webinar with Sarah. And hopefully we'll get to see Walter one day soon in person.
All right. I want to give a quick shout out. Every photo you've seen in this presentation was shot by Trina Turl. So it just goes to the importance of not using stock photography and having your own photos and being able to use them how they fit. So whoever your photographer is, find them and book an actual branding session. Don't just use stock photos. It makes a huge difference.
Okay.
I was just trying to pin her or highlight her photo so everyone could see that. I hope that worked. Excellent. Thanks so much, everyone. And have a great day. Stay warm. It looks crazy out there with the wind and the ice. And have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.